Hi again, everybody. This is the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. I'm Jamie Allison, and this is the destination for high performers. This is where we talk to people from different niches, different backgrounds with different ideas, find out a little bit about what big moves they're making in their space, also find out some of those success techniques that they have that they can share with us, and hopefully we can all kind of take away in some action items as we go through today. Today, I think that we're going to get a lot of those. I think everyone's going to be really happy with the guests that we have today. Just before we jump into that, a couple of quick items that we just have to kind of talk about. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, one of our supporters is Jazz HR, and right now a lot of organizations, if you're starting to start that recruitment process again, or starting to figure out how are we going to do that a little bit better, it's a great solution for you, especially if you're a small or medium-sized business. They help. Their solution helps you look for the talent, track the talent, schedule interviews, all those things that are just time consumers for managers. So that way you can focus on getting the right people and not all of that other stuff as well. So definitely take a look at it. All you have to do is go to www.bigideabigmoves.com and you'll see a link on there. Also in the show notes, you'll be able to see that as well. The other side of things is Epitome HR is helping on the other side of that as well, is that they have started putting together a few career coaching packages for those individuals who are maybe out of work right now, or are thinking that maybe they're reevaluating and maybe you want to come back to something a little bit different. You might need that help in looking at your LinkedIn profile, looking at your resumes, and they actually do a lot with organizations on the other side of things to say, what does an ATS look like? What do they look for in individuals, and what do recruiters look for? So it's a good thing to be able to help bring you above all of the competition that will be out there in the next little while. So again, same thing, www.bigideabigmoves.com, and definitely take advantage of that. So we're going to jump right in. I think this is not only is it great to be able to talk to Bruce today. Bruce Croxon made his mark as a digital pioneer by co-founding Lavalife, and that revolutionized how people connect. As the chairman and CEO, Bruce helped lead that company's growth, and eventually it sold for over $180 million. So hopefully we'll hear a little bit about that. He's currently a partner at Round13 Capital, and that's a company dedicated to investing in growth stage technology companies. And he is also the co-host of Disruptors on BNN and CTV, and you'll remember him as a dragon on CBC's Dragon's Den. So I'm sure people will recognize his voice or his face if you're watching this on YouTube as well. So first of all, Bruce, you're a really respected investor, but also the entrepreneur part is really cool for us. So thanks very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Jamie. Good to be here.
Well, this time is actually really interesting for me to be able to talk to you about, because this is we're in a very different time than even 6 months ago, and wondering, from your end, because you do a lot of investment, you do a lot of things, looking at the economy. What have you been doing in the last little while? Do you see this? Have you been kind of pulling back a little bit? Have you kind of seen this as an opportunity to look for certain things? How do you see the environment right now, and how have you kind of jumped into that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think as you said, we're about 6 months in, so I'm going to break it up into sort of two sections. The first, I would say 6 to 8 weeks, certainly, were, the dawning realization that a lot of small and medium-sized businesses were going to experience drastic change. And it wasn't going to be, sort of a short-term blip. It was going to be some serious challenges that, some of our investee companies were going to have. So we have a portfolio of 17 companies, all Canadian based, all focused on software technology. And, depending on how deep you wanted to look beneath the covers, arguably 17 different situations caused by, this external event. So, needless to say, the first 6 to 8 weeks were all about, inwardly looking, making sure that they were equipped to deal, making sure that they were grasping the reality of the situation, and then sort of making plans appropriately. And, just say as I finish off that little section of time, I came away from that, a lifelong entrepreneur myself, just, reaffirming the resiliency and strength and optimism and attitude of Canadian entrepreneurs in this case, to be able to face reality, keep a stiff upper lip, make plans, don't be, paralyzed for too long, and, renew that kind of hope that this too will pass and we'll still be there on the other side if we, continue to do the right things with the right people around us and treat people well, and the amount of empathy and compassion and let's do the right thing, that permeated those discussions, I was very heartened by.
Yeah,
So,
that is really interesting, I think, because that was the difficult, it's seems to be the differentiator in so many places right now is, from a leadership perspective, there was how that happened in those first 6 to 8 weeks is what will stay with all of those organizations, I think, because you're either going to come out of it as being perceived as incredible, great leaders or the opposite. And there was no in between.
That's right. No, I think that's exactly right. And, I think there's nothing like pressure, to bring out people's true colors, right? And, if I could, I guess I could have created a more pressure packed situation if you let my imagination run wild, but it was it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
That was some pretty abrupt change, for a lot of people, and a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of people to care for. So yeah, I think people's true colors shone through, and at least speaking for our portfolio at Round 13, I was quite encouraged. Now, the second, part of the 6 months, we've been probably more active than ever before in terms of making investment. And, I think that's the product of a couple of things. One is, I think, pricing was adjusted somewhat and activity went down somewhat, because people were, nervous, and how long is this going to last, and how is it going to affect me really? And a lot of those questions went, there's no answers for, and there's still in some industries not an answer for. Airlines, hotels, but there were segments of what we do and how we work and how we buy and how we behave, that were positively affected, making the best of a worrisome situation. And, those areas deserved attention, and they were still looking to be funded and, gather enough resources to fulfill the demand that was coming as a result of people staying at home and having to collaborate remotely and, continue to manage their income statements for efficiency and that kind of thing. So those were areas that, we got excited about, and thankfully we had enough, and have enough money under management, that we were able to, help those companies out.
And when you're looking at the environment and its impact right now, when you're looking at those organizations, how much does the current environment come into play, or are you really looking at kind of longer term as the heavier factor to look at?
Well, I think you have to think a little bit longer term for sure, right? And because for two reasons, one, we don't know how long behavior is going to be changed for, right?
Yep.
So, in some of the industries, you just have to, unless you think, for example, no one's going to come back to work and no one's ever going to get on a plane again, by nature, you have to stay positive, and you have to think longer term. The other factor is there has been a short-term behavior bump, as people adjusted to a new reality and equipped their home office and, went local RVing because there's no plane, like we don't want to get on a plane, and who's going to Europe today. So there's a lot of, so that begs for an analysis or an opinion on, you know, whether that's a short-term blip in how good business is going to continue to be, or
Yeah.
whether, or what percentage of that is sustainable, I guess is the better way to put it.
Right. Like how long is it? I mean, remote work might be a great example is, you know, some organizations now have been pushed into a new reality and then they're realizing, oh, you know, this might be okay. And maybe this means only 50% of our workforce comes back or whatever that happens to be. Whereas
Right.
before they weren't pushing themselves to do that. So there's technology ways that impacts on that, I would assume.
No, and exactly. And I'll give you one other example, you know, relevant one, which, you know, the large institutions like banks and financial institutions, you know, insurance companies, et cetera. I was shocked by, you know, I was made aware of this earlier than COVID because we made an investment in a company called Source Group, which basically migrates large institutions' applications to the cloud. And I've been amazed by how many of the large institutions still aren't in the cloud with the majority of their applications. And that, of course, came home to roost as all the bank employees went home and then had to book VPN time to communicate back to the computers that were on-prem or, you know, hosted somewhere in
Yep.
order to facilitate their clients' needs. So things like that have you know, also proven to be a wake-up call for how we do business, right? Which I think will be sustained for years and years to come because there's a lot of work. In that case that I gave you, there's a lot of work to be done, right?
Yeah. I mean, if there's a positive out of it, that's one good piece. Now, right now, it sounds like you're just as busy or even busier than you were before.
Yes.
So this is maybe kind of the personal side of things. Is when you have that many initiatives and that many things going on, how do you personally, you know, be able to balance that? I mean, you've got a family, you want to do kind of all of those things. So what kind of things do you do to
Well,
deal with
I'll start by saying I'm a lot better at it now than I was earlier in my career.
it?
Thankfully, early in my career when, you know, I was on the operating side and, you know, really devoted and thinking about what I was trying to do 7 days a week, I wasn't a good balanced person. But I think what happens with experience is you get to work more efficiently and you get to the answer quicker. And I've also had the benefit of being able to surround myself with some very capable um, teammates on the investment side that are younger and that are sharing the load and that, you know, may not have the same situation with me with a family. So it's not easy is the
Yeah.
message, but it's important because you know, especially today, there is no end of information coming at us and no end to the data that we're being asked to process and influence our decision making. So in many ways, if you don't let it, the work is never done. So I think the importance of setting boundaries and making sure that you set aside time for your mental health and well-being has become even more critical today.
Yeah, it's interesting. Almost every you know, every level of individual in an organization is starting to say that now, that they realize that the work will continue. I mean, you can put in a 14-hour day or you can put in an 8-hour day. The work is just going to keep coming. So it's trying to figure out what's the sweet spot in there as well. Um, the other thing, as an entrepreneur, especially during that time that was a heavy focus for you, is there something that surprised you in that you hadn't anticipated when you started kind of taking that path from an entrepreneur standpoint?
Oh, well, you know, you're going back with me, Jamie. The last time I actually worked in a traditional, you know, boss employer
Yeah.
situation was I was 21 years old. So
Couple of years.
I'm late 50s now. So, you know, it's a long way. I think I was, you know, continually surprised on my journey on, you know, how it looks easy from the outside, but
Yeah.
you know, where I've developed my deep-rooted respect for anybody that creates a business, small, medium, or large, that is enough to give some people a job and put food on the table. You know, my hat's off because, you know, I've had a, you know, I've had a number of that have gone well. I've had a number that have not gone well.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a lot of work. Right. So,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was a surprise past the first 2 or 3 ventures that I embarked on, but it doesn't get any easier. I mean, you still have to put the time in, and you have to surround yourself with the right people. But if you want to talk about specific lessons that I've learned that I carried forward, the biggest one for me has been just how critical it is when you're starting something or growing something to put the appropriate amount of time into defining and understanding the type of person that you want to have around you. And it goes to the core values of the organization that you're building, because I've seen in my career, I've seen lots of ideas. You mentioned the Dragon's Den earlier, but Lavalife before that attracted a lot of new ideas and new interests, and let's look at this venture, let's look at that venture. And I can tell you what, I've seen enough mediocre ideas do quite well with the right people shoulder to the wheel, and I've seen some incredible ideas just go to nothing because people hadn't put the right amount of thought into who you want to go to war with, to use an old analogy, right?
Yeah. And that's really it with a lot of entrepreneurial ventures. You never go into it thinking it's not going to work. So, you have to be ready to put in the work to do it.
That's right.
Going to Dragon's Den for a second, when because now you're that recognizable face that people see, all of those things, and it's not that you wouldn't have had that because of your business kind of life, but it would have been a completely different thing, very different. So, what was that like for you to suddenly go from that to a more, I don't want to say celebrity, but it is kind of that kind of status where you're noticed, and you're noticed for a different reason. How was that for you?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I spent 3 years on the show, and I was given a heads up before I went on the show about how watched that television program was at the time. I don't know if it still is, but it was a very popular Canadian show, and it gave me pause because I am a relatively private person. And to be honest, I never did get fully comfortable with walking through the airport and getting stopped and, wondering if I should have known the person from some other place. So I never did quite adjust to it. But, it was very real. Like Canada's not that big a place. It is geographically, but not by television audience standards. So I was not a big watcher of the show, didn't see it before I went on it, and haven't watched it since. But as I learned, I was in the extreme minority.
Yeah. Well, and I think that celebrity piece is a big thing that's probably also helped you as well, has it not? That now you have a profile that probably also gives you more opportunity, does it?
I think it really has. It's amazing. It can verge on being ironic as well, though. I have to admit, like, you're getting paid to give a speech to, a couple thousand people, and then in Q&A, somebody's asking you questions about how to raise kids. Because you're a business, you're perceived to have had some business success.
Yeah.
And so. Yes, it's opened a lot of doors, and yes, people are curious, so they at least will sit down with you once, and they want to work with you. So I think it's been a great door opener. But it can also get you can also get carried away with it, this whole celebrity thing, because frankly, I made it very clear I'm not the right guy to ask. I find raising kids to be the challenge of my life.
So, everyone. So if you've got kids, that should be the challenge.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for you then, there are some people that say, okay, I'm an early morning person. I do all of this stuff in the morning. That's my time. What does a day look like for Bruce? Are you one of those people that are really heavy into certain time periods, or is it just, your day can vary so much?
Yeah, no, I'm not an extreme routine person. When the weather's nice, I am up early. First of all, I'm an 8-hour a night sleep guy, right? Yep. So whether that's become psychological or necessity, I couldn't tell you. But if I'm getting 6, I'm either convinced myself it's not enough or it really isn't enough, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like to get 8, and you know, when it's nice, I like to get my overnight emails and communication and get my team set up for the day, make sure I've got a feel for what everyone's up to while I'm having a cup of coffee, you know, sort of between 7 and 9, you know.
Yep.
I'm completely open as to when I get exercise during the day, but I generally need to get some. And beyond that, you know, one of the core values of Round 13 is we're opportunistic. So, you know, that does require a certain flexibility and open-mindedness to other people's schedules and, you know, things that need attention that you know, you may not forecast every week, for example, come up. I mean, we're in the business of helping small businesses become medium-sized businesses, and anybody in that, and we're very hands-on. So anyone in that area that tells you it's a steady upward climb to the right is not giving you the straight goods, right? It is, you know, these 17 companies are on different types of roller coasters every day, right? So if we're going to really be valuable to them, you know, yes, we have to help them get structured so that the communication is more orderly, etc. But you know, you also have to be willing to ride with them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that is a 24-hour job, like you said, in some of the entrepreneurial ventures. So you have to be aware that you're going to have to kind of jump in at odd times too, I would assume. So those people are all looking up to you. You've got lots of people that look up to you for your advice, and all this. Is there somebody that you really look to, or that, you know, has really impacted your career?
Well, yeah, there is. He's 92.
Yeah.
And struggling a little bit right now, but. You know, I mean, my dad showed up here with as an immigrant with $40 and a grade 8 education, and got to work, and you know, became an entrepreneur himself, and you know, from a very young age, I was able to witness what dedication and, you know, overcoming the odds look like, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm an optimist by nature. And I think part of that was because I was raised by someone that instilled in me early that, you know, anything that I really wanted to do, I could probably do if I was dedicated and persistent enough around it.
Yeah.
And they weren't just words, because, you know, I knew his story.
Yeah. You
right?
had the role model right there.
So, I mean, I can't think of a bigger impact there. I also had the benefit of working early while we were building Lavalife. We were very forward thinking from an organizational development perspective.
Yeah.
And one of the people that was teaching us, who became a mentor of mine, that taught us the importance of having a vision and where you wanted to take a company, and then the importance of actually defining your core values to make sure you screened for those on the way in, and then encourage that behavior while you were operating the company, and tied it into performance management and the importance of having goals and sharing, you know, with equity and bonuses. And that's always been our approach. And, you know, I've never done anything without partners. So and that comes from, you know, understanding a little bit of self-reflection, understanding the things I'm good at and the things that I need help with.
Yeah. And you mentioned a lot about resiliency and how that was kind of built up, you know, seeing your dad do that as well. Is that something you look at in the entrepreneurs or the businesses that you kind of, you know, and how do you gauge that? I mean, that's a difficult thing to kind of figure out, but it is probably one of those intangibles that has the most impact on whether a place can, you know, move forward or not.
Well, the name of our fund is Round 13.
Yeah.
Round 13 is named after the 13th round of a very famous heavyweight boxing match between Fraser and Ali in 1975, called the Thrilla in Manila. Mm-hmm. And a lot of fans think that was the most brutal round of boxing in the history of the sport. And long story short, those guys went at it so hard that by the start of the 15th round, neither fighter could get up off the stool to finish. Yeah. And when Ali heard that Fraser couldn't get up, he found it within himself to stand, and by standing won the fight, right? So, in answer to your question, we believe in it so strongly, this ability to grind when the going gets tough, that we named our firm after it and built our culture and theme around it. And to the second part of your question, yes, it is. It's always hard to screen for attributes. So, you know, whether it be in this case resiliency, or if I had to pick a core value for the 21st century, it might be, you know, continuous learning. People that are curious, that have the, you know, that are looking to, you know, overturn the last rock to find the right answer. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I think you just have to take your time. You have to ask the right questions. You can't be rushed, and you have to look at, you know, past behavior. And beyond that, you're not going to get it right every step of the time. That is true. But it really, my message, core message is, it's really worth the effort to get as close to the right fit as you can.
Yeah. Now, the one thing we ask every guest is, you know, so let's say there is an entrepreneur who's hearing that and hearing kind of thinking, I really want to move ahead, and I've got an idea and I really want to move it ahead. If you were to say there are kind of 2 or 3 pieces of advice or things that you think they could do right away as that starting point, what would they be?
Well, the first thing I would do is look in the, I'd get up and I'd look in the mirror and I'd say, look, you know, knowing myself as well as I do, what are the things that I think that I'm going to bring to this venture? And equally important, what are the gaps on the things that I think I'm going to need that I don't possess? And I think the earlier you can articulate that and find a way, depending on how important those things are that you don't have to the success of the business, the quicker you can get people around you that have those qualities. And I would be over generous at that point in the venture if you're just starting, to make sure that you do have that. The quicker you can get that out of the way, the better off you are. And the second thing that you can do right away is try and imagine a world 18 months from now about where you would like to be with this idea, right? Where would you like to be? And make it reasonable, you know? You can have a 5-year goal that, you know, is unreasonable, but like, where do I really want to be in the next 18 months? Yeah. And write it down, right? And then start to formulate little goals and plans around milestones that will help you get there. And if you line up the 18-month plan with the bigger vision, with the sort of shorter term plans to make it happen, and you augment yourself with the right core value, skill and core value, equally important. I'd say core value even more so. Yeah. Then you've got the makings of a good start. And those are things you can do, you know, like in your home office. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's perfect. And if so if people want to find out more about you, follow your stuff, Bruce, what are the best ways of doing that?
So I'm active on Twitter. I'm not a Facebook user. I'm active on Twitter. You'll find me writing the odd piece on LinkedIn. It's Bruce_Croxon at Twitter. And, you know, you'll find everything you need to know about me there. And my investment firm is Round13.com. And, you know, we are, again, focused entirely and confidently in the Canadian technology ecosystem. One other thing I will mention is I'm involved with a charity called Helping Hands Jamaica. My maternal homeland is Jamaica. Yep. We've built 22 primary schools down there over the years. And if you go to the website, helpinghandsjamaica.com, we've got our helpinghandsjamaicafoundation.com. We've got our annual walkathon coming up. We are going to get out this fall. So if any of your listeners feel like supporting a good cause, I would appreciate it.
And I'll make sure that we put that in the show notes. So if you didn't get it, we'll make sure it's in there and people can take the line right through from there, the link through. I will add to people who are just listening, this is probably the most Canadian interview I think I've ever seen, because behind Bruce's head is what would Neil Young do, and I've got the Tragically Hip behind my head. So I think we've basically covered kind of music in Canada behind us as well. So
yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
kind of cool.
you're right. You're
Um,
right.
all right. Well, again, thanks very much, Bruce. We really appreciate you coming on today. It's there's so many great things that you've been able to share, and we'll look forward to seeing kind of everything you do over the next little while.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And for everybody listening, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, give us a rating, give us a review, because that helps us get the message out there as well. And make sure that you get onto our website, which is www.bigideabigmoves.com, and take a look at some of the other episodes. And if you subscribe, you'll get all the next ones as they come up every week. We will talk to everybody again on Big Idea, Big Moves.